In a world of fast-moving screens, Arthur lived among the whispers of the past, surrounded by the scent of aged leather and ancient drying ink. To the outside world, this was merely a room full of forgotten trash, but to Arthur, every single scrap held the beating heart of history. For 50 years, he had been a guardian of lost stories, meticulously piecing together the broken fragments of humanity's greatest intellectual and artistic achievements. His family saw no beauty here, only a waste of valuable space and a pile of useless rubbish that stood in the way of their greed. He treated every page like a sacred relic, knowing that once these words were lost to decay, they would be gone from the world forever. He knew his time was short, yet his devotion never wavered, even as his own flesh and blood plotted to sweep his life's work away. The moment Arthur stepped away for a brief medical appointment, the vultures descended upon his sanctuary, ready to tear his legacy apart for pennies. Without a second thought, his son called a local scrap dealer, eager to clear out what he called the old man's obsession once and for all. Centuries of knowledge were treated like common refuse, tossed carelessly into the metal bin, as if they were nothing more than damp, worthless cardboard. They sold a lifetime of passion for the price of a few cheap meals, convinced they had finally outsmarted the old man's stubbornness and sentimentality. Finally, she boasted, we can turn this dusty tomb into a gym. Something practical that actually adds value to this house and our lives. When Arthur returned, the silence was deafening. His life's work had vanished, replaced by the cold, hollow echoes of a room stripped of its soul. The dealer, hoping for a small profit, took a few interesting-looking pages to a specialist, unaware he was holding the keys to a fortune. The specialist's hands began to tremble as he realized what lay before him. An original, long-lost manuscript bearing the unmistakable mark of Leonardo da Vinci. This wasn't just paper, it was a national treasure, a piece of history so rare that its movement was strictly governed by international heritage laws. The illegal sale of such a protected artifact immediately triggered a federal investigation, turning a family betrayal into a serious, high-stakes national criminal case. Panic set in as they realized their greed had led them into a legal minefield they couldn't escape. Facing charges of grand larceny and heritage theft, Arthur was brought in not as a suspect, but as the only expert capable of identifying the true scope of the treasures his family had discarded. He looked at the recovered fragments with the love of a father finding a lost child. His knowledge, now his most powerful weapon of justice. The house was no longer a home, but a prison of paperwork and fear. As the weight of federal law descended upon the ungrateful heirs, he begged his father to lie, to tell the authorities it was a gift, a desperate attempt to save his own skin from the impending judgment. Her dreams of a gym and a modern lifestyle had vanished, replaced by the cold reality of a criminal record and a future in ruins. Arthur watched them with a calm, distant gaze. He felt no malice, only the profound sadness of a man who finally saw his family's true character. I am not seeking revenge, he thought. I am simply allowing the truth to restore the balance that your greed so recklessly tilted away. With a steady hand, he prepared to sign the documents that would speak for the books that could not speak for themselves, sealing their fate. Every stroke of his pen was an act of restoration, returning the value to the history they mocked and the justice to the life they betrayed. Months later, the world stood still as the National Museum prepared to unveil the treasure that had almost been lost to a scrap heap. The humble restorer was now the guest of honor, celebrated by the greatest minds in history and art for his unwavering vigilance and expertise. The applause was thunderous, a roar of respect for the man who saw diamonds where others saw dirt, and who protected the world's shared heritage. He inaugurated a new center for preservation, ensuring that his skills and his passion would be passed down to generations of future guardians. The scrap paper was now the crown jewel of the collection, valued at millions, but prized even more for the history it finally revealed. In stark contrast, his son left the court with a heavy sentence and a reputation in tatters, a victim of his own shallow heart. The money they sought had turned to ash, and the space they wanted to clear now stood empty and silent, a monument to their loss. Arthur finally found the peace he deserved, residing in a sanctuary where every book was cherished and every page was treated with the highest honor. He spent his days doing what he loved, surrounded by the wisdom of the ages, no longer a victim, but a legend in his own time. He taught the youth that knowledge is the only true wealth, and that some things are far too precious to ever be measured in gold. As the sun set on his long journey, he knew his legacy was secure, etched into the very fibers of the books he had saved. For while greed is eventually forgotten, the truth preserved in these pages will endure forever, a testament to the master who never gave up.